So the Technosphere transforms. Also my PowerPoint has been transformed, and I'm curious to see how it looks like now. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Katrin, dear conveners, it's a pleasure to be here and to give you a brief 10 minutes of reflections on the Technosphere and its triggers. The concept of the Technosphere induces us to take a global perspective, but it also might conjure a somewhat static or stable image. That was not the way that Peter Huff intended it, but the very word, the very label Technosphere might suggest that. Here I would like to argue against such a view. The Technosphere is not just the entirety of the material and societal components of the global technologically based system. I rather like to describe it as a space, and Katrin Klingern mentioned that already, in which humanity's metabolism with its earthly environment, in which humanity's metabolism, interaction with its earthly environment takes place, constantly transforming the environment by human labor and its economic conditions. So what is the dynamics of the Technosphere? And what is the dynamics of my PowerPoint? This is always the risk to work with an alien computer. You see, I should have brought my own computer, my own Technosphere. There's where I feel at home. Okay, so it was not just me. So I argued against the static image of a Technosphere, but my PowerPoint contradicts me. Okay, next one. Can you do that? Okay, now I use this one. Now I realize it. We can conceive the Technosphere as the result of an ergosphere, in the sense of a sphere that has been created by human labor and that, at least for the time being, will continue to depend on it, on human labor. And we should also not forget the Technosphere is also a pathosphere, a sphere of human suffering. And it is in no way as symmetric as the label sphere suggests. The Technosphere is a polycentric sphere that has evolved from specific, very unequally distributed triggering points. This conception opens up a window on understanding its dynamics, on understanding how Technosphere triggers work. They are the result of a particular kind of co-evolution of our planetary environment, of social developments, and of the evolution of knowledge. One such triggering point with a global impact was what we have called the Bacon matrix. Generally speaking, it designates a positive feedback loop between the economy of goods and the economy of knowledge. The mechanism is, by the way, not just limited to capitalist and industrialized societies, but vice versa, may have given rise to the emergence of industrialized capitalism in the first place. So what is the mechanism? Very roughly, it is the following. The economy of goods produces surplus knowledge. It always does that. The economy of knowledge may enhance the economy of goods. This is also quite generally the case. But under specific local circumstances, a coupling of the two economies may be induced by a matrix of knowledge-intensive production environments. A specific example is the Bacon matrix in the early modern period, which is, of course, the reason why we have called it that way, related to a new understanding of the scientific revolution that has emerged in the past years. Now we see more clearly not just the crucial role of practical knowledge for the emergence of science, but the role of knowledge-intensive production sites, such as the big building sites of Renaissance cities, or what you see here in the picture, the Arsenal of Venice, as triggers of the Technosphere. In this perspective, we not only see the role of practical knowledge for science, but also the particular coupling between epistemic and material productivity that has emerged in such sites, and we have designated those signs as matrices, because in the early modern period you see very clearly that much of the pre-formation of the later societal formation of industrial capitalism has been shaped already by these early knowledge-intensive production sites. So on this background, we can see that the scientific and the industrial revolutions are really no separate phenomena, but have their origin in the same trigger, represented by a matrix that has turned global knowledge resources coming from a broad range of cultures into means of Western domination. So in other words, the matrix is both local and a global mechanism, and the first installation, for instance, of a steam engine to lift up water around 1700, here shown in a painting by Canaletto, would have probably been inconsequential without the impact of colonialism in creating asymmetrical global markets. But our central example here of a technosphere trigger is what we have called the Liebig matrix, which again is both local and global in character, and which is currently explored by our guest scientist Lucia Lebowitz from Uruguay. The story of the Liebig matrix is closely connected to the Industrial Revolution and to the pivotal role that chemistry and the chemical industry played in Germany during this period. In 1847, the chemist Justus von Liebig created a concentrated beef extract. This beef extract represents, at the same time, an ingenious invention combining scientific and practical knowledge and the social divide emerging in the sequel of the Industrial Revolution, intended as it was to offer a cheap meat substitute for those unable to afford the real thing. Liebig published his invention in 1847 and immediately envisaged its production at an industrial scale. I quote, "The benefit of it should be placed at the command of as large a number of persons as possible by the extension of the manufacture and consequently a reduction in the cost." In 1862, the engineer George Christian Guibert took up Liebig's idea and suggested to Liebig that the process could be optimally industrialized under the specific conditions of South America. Using the flesh of cattle that, before the popularity of canning or freezing meat, would otherwise have been killed for their hides alone, he hoped to produce meat extract at 1/3 of the European costs. With Liebig's agreement and the backing of a group of entrepreneurs and rangers, Guibert established the Société de Fray Bentos, Guibert and Company, and built a test extraction plant at Villa Independencia, Uruguay, later called Fray Bentos. By the end of 1864, 50,000 pounds of extract worth 12,000 pounds had been exported and sold. Since 1865, a factory using Justus Liebig's patent to produce meat extract transformed the Uruguayan town of Fray Bentos into a landmark of agro-industrial globalization, one of the many original sites where the chemical laboratory, the world, and the Anthropocene meet halfway. Indeed, the technical possibility to produce meat extract on an industrial scale transformed the South American plains into a landscape for mass cattle breeding, structuring an entire world market. Liebig cooperated in the invention of the first meat disintegrator of industrial size, together with Max von Pettenkofer and George Christian Guibert. At Lemco, that is Liebig's extract of meat company, Guibert, an engineer from Hamburg, not only produced the extract of meat on an industrial scale, but also the first artificial fertilizer made by Liebig, and both the extract and the fertilizer became the first agricultural products produced on a transnational scale. To summarize, it is a characteristic feature of technosphere triggers that they start locally but have a global and often lasting and transformative impact. The impact of Liebig extract of meat company can be felt until today. The company was acquired by the Veste Group in 1924. The company's assets included over 2 to 3 million hectares of farmland and herds of cattle in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Rhodesia, Kenya, and South Africa. Liebig merged with Brooke Bond in 1968, which was in turn acquired by Unilever in 1984, followed by Campbell's Soup, who sold the UK operation to Premier Foods in 2006. The global meat market is now part of the technosphere that still does not turn around without the work and the suffering of humans and animals on a global scale. Thank you very much.